These days, people seem to be putting a lot of emphasis into their identity. But how much of your identity is actually who you are, and how much of it can be changed? Welcome to the Overcome Depression podcast. The tools you learn here can make depression a part of your past, allow healing regardless of your present circumstances, and offer hope for your future. I am your host, Jennifer Stirling-Campbell. I've been a trumpet player for around 25 years now, and I've also taught trumpet students for many, many years. And believe it or not, some of my best students have been my older students, 60, 70 years old. They say you can't teach a dog new tricks, and yet some of these students of mine progress faster and enjoy musical talents at an old age because they didn't either have the opportunity as a child to do it and they decided, you know what, I'm going to do it now, or perhaps they did it as a child and they wanted to continue improving as an adult. Creative endeavors, by the way, bring the most joy of anything I know of. I'm reading The Artist's Way right now, and it's all about bringing out the creative in all of us. So highly recommend that book. But my point being that some of these older students, while they don't have the foundation possibly that a child, for example, might, if they were 4 years old, they picked up an instrument, or they probably didn't pick it up, their parents probably gave it to them or got them lessons after they saw an interest, hopefully. Parents often get their children started on an instrument very young because the theory is that if a child cannot remember a day without their instrument, for example, if you started violin at the age of 4, you wouldn't be able to remember a day without it. And it becomes essentially a part of your identity, where you could say, I am so-and-so and I play violin. That's just part of who you are. And because of that, it's almost like the instrument's an extension of you, and it's ingrained in who you are. And there's that pride and that desire to continue to play. Adults don't necessarily have that. And I think that's kind of can be actually a strength in some ways, because their worth isn't necessarily tied up into their instrument. Now, it might be tied up into other things, but I've noticed that because an adult doesn't necessarily put limits on their ability as an instrument, because maybe they've never played one before, it doesn't hinder their progress. For example, when I was around 27 maybe years old, I actually took a year off of playing the trumpet. I didn't really have any motivation to play. I was discouraged. Life was pretty hard, so I just didn't play for about a year. And then I found a group, Millennial Choirs and Orchestras, and I decided that I was going to start playing again. So I practiced. I remember picking up the horn for the first time and thinking, oh, this is going to be rough. And I was actually really surprised. My endurance was pretty poor, but my range was really good, like better than it had ever been. And I think having that expectation taken away, where I wasn't expecting myself to play well and just trying it, it actually solved some of the emotional blocks that I'd had as a trumpet player all through my teens and early 20s, when I had gone to college and really worked hard at it, and I didn't believe that I could go above a certain note. And then suddenly I took a year off, and then I was able to. So we wrap a lot of belief around what we can do and who we are by our experience. And let's just say that me, being a trumpet player, I still play to this day. I teach trumpet lessons as well still, and I love it. But let's pretend that I lose my hand or I damage my mouth in a way that I can no longer play the trumpet anymore. When someone asked me, who are you? What's your name? I would possibly say, my name is Jennifer and I play the trumpet. But if they asked me after an accident where I can't play trumpet anymore, hey, what's your name? Who are you? All I would be able to say possibly is, oh, I'm Jennifer. I can no longer associate my identity with the trumpet. And is being just Jennifer enough? Is being just ourselves enough? Can that carry us through? Is that going to be enough for our sense of worth, our sense of value? Or do we grasp onto things, try to prove our worth through doing stuff or being stuff or having certificates? If all of that was taken away, who are you? And that's a question that I want you to ask is anything in my life making me feel better about myself in a way that I wouldn't say isn't healthy, but if you took it away, would you feel like you were less? And if the answer is yes, then there may be some type of unhealthy attachment to that part of your identity. And that can go in many different directions. It's definitely not a good foundation for your value. I do think that foundationally, if we know our worth as a creation of a divine being, that alone can carry us through anything. And I know that some of you listening may not believe in God, but if you can conceptualize the idea that you were created, that you are here for a reason, and just hold on to that is the only identity we need to know, is that we are important. And I once saw Matthew Hussey did a diagram for he's actually a relationship dating coach, and I subscribed to him back when I was single, really like his stuff. But he drew a circle and he put a dot in the middle of the circle for the people in his class. And he started asking people, well, what do you think makes you special, or what do you do? And he just started writing things on the board that different people shouted out. I'm a consultant. I like cheese. I go to the park every Wednesday. And so he just started filling in the inside of this circle. And at the end, he crossed out everything in this circle, and then he circled the little dot in the middle, and he said, all of this stuff, like, it's nice and good. And it's great that we have the ability to choose these things. It says something about our motivation and intrinsically where we're headed, what our desires are. It says a lot about where we are at right now. But ultimately, this in the middle, he did a little arrow to it. He said, this is you. It's just you, without any of the descriptors that make us feel like we are somebody. Is it enough to just be you? Just Jennifer. And I actually have a friend, he's slightly on the spectrum. When this friend of mine looks at someone, he says, I can't even really conceptualize what they look like or descriptors of their hair color, their eye color. I just see this essence of them. I see this essence of you. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. It's not something I fully understand, but if we could all get closer to that as we see each other as children of God, children of a beautiful universe. We're all here in it together. We're all connected. But I have actually thought before that, well, if we're all connected and we're all just one, why does individuality even matter? Makes me feel kind of unspecial. But it's actually the opposite, because we are individually needed for a greater purpose. We all have this amazing capacity to do individual good for the collective good. And there are things literally that no one else can do better than us. And I truly believe that. Discovering that and building that and choosing that is the challenge of life. And I think a lot of people who may be listening to this podcast are struggling. If you're struggling with depression or mental disorder, you could be blocked from seeing that worth and that potential. When I look at people's charts, I am a Christian, but I'm also an astrologer, a God-centered astrologer. So when I look at people's charts, I look for God's guidance and individual purpose and value, and try to give people hope and connect them to God through looking at their charts. So you can actually make an appointment on imaquarius.com if you're interested in doing a session with me. But what's amazing is that I've never seen a chart that wasn't phenomenal. Some have a lot of challenge, but everything is good. And the potential for good is even greater when those challenges are in play. And when I look for those things, it makes me realize how individually phenomenal every spirit is. No one is born at the same time. No one has the same chart. It just doesn't happen. Even twins, they're born usually seconds at least apart. And so it's very individual. The opportunities that are set before us, we may or may not fully achieve as a result of our choices. And that's a hard thing for some people to grasp, because I think a lot of people will blame their circumstances on their identity, blame their past on the struggles that they're having now, and blame their depression, and I just can't get over it, and it's so-and-so's fault, or this is fault, or my country's fault. And there's so many examples of people throughout history who have overcome despite excruciating circumstances. You have to look to those examples. There is hope for you. And anyone can heal. I believe that wholeheartedly. We have a savior. There is an ultimate good, something looking out for us that wants us to reach our highest potential. Now, what identity do you want to lean into? There's a dark side and there's a light side. And there's always several paths set before us. Which one will we choose? I think the goal for all of us is to choose the brightest one. The brightest one may not always be the easiest one. But I found that choosing the brightest one, even if it seems horrendously difficult, often results in an easier, big picture outcome. And keeping that perspective in mind is insanely important. Keeping our sights on God and his purposes for us, his will for us, even if it's not what we want right now, that he can see the bigger picture. And that as he's looking down and we're looking at this mess going, oh my, how am I going to get through this? This is just awful. Look at all the mistakes I've made. And he's looking down and saying, oh, no. This is turning out absolutely beautifully. You will see. You just wait. You'll see. Just hang on. Keep looking up. I'm sure some of you have heard this one before, but $100 bill. No matter what you do to it, you can step on it, crush it, put it in the mud, wrap it into a ball, throw it at somebody. It's still going to be worth $100. You wash it off, it's like, yep, it's $100. So our value is much like that $100 bill. And I know this is kind of a cliche argument, but so true. And I think it might be a good idea for you to put a dollar bill somewhere and maybe write a note on a sticky. It's against the law to write on a dollar bill, but you could put a sticky note and say, I hold my value. No matter what you do to that dollar, it will always be worth $1. No matter mistakes you have made, no matter how dirty you feel, you are still worth every bit as much as the day you were born. You will be worth every bit as much the day you die. And before and after that, it's innumerable. It can't even be measured. Much more worth than $1. Let me just tell you that. But as part of this program, the goal here is to create a new identity. The identity that you believe about yourself, but because beliefs are so powerful. And as you envision what you are going to be, your future self, what you are working towards, that will have more effect on your choices now than your views of the past. If you can reframe the past to eventually, I know this is hard for a lot of people, but eventually get to the point where you can say, I am so grateful for that horrendous experience because it has made me who I am. And you can look back on it and feel gratitude rather than pain, that the pain will be gone. And that you can then teach others to overcome the things that you have overcome. And if you can have that perspective, Benjamin Hardy talks about this a lot, being able to see that future you and conceptualize that future you and feel what that feels like, and start living as if you are that person now, working towards that. As you work towards that, you're not going to be perfect, but you've got to believe that this is possible. That is what drives us, is the future, not the past. And you have to stop using your past as an excuse to stay where you are. Let's not keep reliving the past. In other words, let's create a different future. And to live a different future, you have to be someone different than you are right now. What has worked before will not work moving forward. So minuscule changes, little steps, just making steps at all. That is what this program is about. In your past, people may have told you who you were, what you were not, what you could do, what you couldn't do. We spent, 12, 13 years, possibly more, from elementary school, preschool, to the end of high school, and then we went to college and we're told what we learned, how to learn it, how we felt, how we should feel, and what we should do, and not to mention our parents, who most of our parents had very good intentions. However, most of our parents are very flawed, including me. And I apologize to my kids regularly, or I have over the years, that I am imperfect. I will do damage as I parent you. And I hope one day you can forgive me. And I hope you know I did the best I could. And that is the truth. I really feel like most people are truly doing their best, but we hurt each other. It's just inevitable part of being alive. When you invest time in a human being of any kind, a friend, a lover, a spouse, a child, a parent, siblings, you do so knowing that this investment could cause some pain sometimes, but that these people that you choose are worth hurting for. And if there are any people in your life right now that you feel continue to damage you in ways that are not going to help your progress, are these people right now worth hurting for? Or can you let some of these relationships go, at least for now, until you're in a better place to be able to not get sucked back into those thought patterns? I would also like to challenge you to stop asking the question, who am I? It's a little bit unhelpful because it suggests that there's some finite, final version of you that you're going to arrive. And that now I know who I am. In fact, when I hear people say that, oh yeah, I know who I am now, it makes me scratch my head a little, because I really think if we're still on this planet, that we're still discovering, we're still learning, we're still growing. There's no arrival for who I am. It's always developing and expanding. And that's the beauty of life, of eternity. Wouldn't it be boring if we just stopped progressing, if we just arrived and it's all good? And I think that a lot of us have this mentality that we want that pension. We want that security. We want to know that once we get to the end of the line that we're going to be safe for the rest of our retirement. And I want to challenge you to stop playing it safe with your identity. Challenge yourself that you're never going to get there, and that's good, that it opens up the possibility of you becoming so much more than you can currently envision or conceptualize. I really truly believe that God wants us to be like him in a very literal way, like perfect. And no, we're not going to do that right now, but working towards that divine perfection is the beautiful experience that we have the opportunity to pursue, not necessarily arrive in this life, but how much fun we can have in challenging ourselves and trying new things and working towards that progress. Now, I think that for some people that may be more exciting than others. I am an Aquarius sun. It just comes to me naturally. I love progression. I love challenging myself. I love moving forward. But if you don't have a lot of that motivation or energy right now, it doesn't mean that you can't develop it or that you can't still progress. There's another idea I want you to challenge, which is that you are not what you are thinking. You are not a sum total of the thoughts in your head. The thoughts in your head have probably come from many years of programming through school system, through church, through mom and dad, through friends, through well-meaning mediators, through friends, through the things we hear on television. I mean, think about it. I haven't heard this term in a while, but they used to call it television programming. And to me, that's very... it's almost like, duh, well, of course. The things we see on TV do program us to believe or feel certain things over time, especially for subscribing to certain shows that teach certain principles or the actors behave in a certain way. The media we consume is extremely important to our identity. So we will talk more about that later, but just how important it is to censor what we choose to watch or censor what we choose to let go through our heads, because I don't think it's possible to watch things, especially regularly, and not have it affect us. I just don't. So if you're watching The Simpsons all the time, it's going to slowly possibly alter the way you feel about what's appropriate in a family and how kids should treat their parents and how fathers preside in the home and so forth. Maybe not the best influences, but I will say I understand why people like The Simpsons. It's very funny. I don't personally watch it, however, for that reason. So if the question isn't who am I, what question is more appropriate? And I want to say it's not a question at all. It's simply a statement. I am. Those two words. I am. And when I say that, I feel like my whole body lights up. It makes me almost want to cry. That's interesting. The words I am appear in the scriptures quite a bit when they're talking about God himself. He refers to himself as I am. And I believe they are very sacred words. One of the 10 Commandments, which one is it? You can put it in the comments if you remember. The commandment not to take the Lord's name in vain. A lot of people have made a big deal out of, you don't say, oh my God. That's bad, bad, bad. And while I would agree it's probably not the most sacred way to use God's name, I think it goes much deeper than that. And when we say the words I am, and then it's followed by something very negative, we are literally desecrating on his creation. We are spitting on his gift. Because we are his offspring. We're important to him. Why do we do this? I mean, I know why. There's forces of darkness that try to get us to question our worth. But that is the epitome, that is the apex of taking the Lord's name in vain. We are commanded not to do this. And if you don't believe in the 10 Commandments, it is still a true principle. When we shut ourselves down through the words I am followed by something that is not true, and it may feel true in the moment, you may think that, well, I've done all these horrible things, it's true, I'm a criminal, I'm this, that, or the other. Okay, but if you're choosing moving forward to create a new identity, you've got to leave that behind. That is no longer who you are. That is who you were. And it is very important to understand that the things we do and the things we say and the thoughts in our head do not define who we are, our potential. That we are given this beautiful gift that we can change. And I know a lot of people out there have struggled for a long time with depression and think maybe I can't. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm here to tell you it is entirely 100% possible. I've done it. I've seen other people do it. And I didn't used to think it was possible either. But I need you, moving forward, when you say the words I am, or even, and they are, because we can label people as well. Labels can be so damaging, even good ones sometimes, because it can put us in these boxes. We want to, and that's another discussion entirely, that might be kind of confusing. I don't want to confuse anyone, but when we say the words I am, it must be followed by something uplifting. It's like singing praises to God. I am so grateful that you made me. I have these qualities, or these potential qualities that I'm choosing today to build upon and make and create. We are creators. We have the power to create in us whoever we want to be. Now, it's a lot easier when we align with God's will for us. When we give up our identity, essentially the things that we want right now, and we align with the pure light that knows where our path, our ideal path, the one that we were sent here to do, and we follow that light, that can show us everything that we are and can be. And it's sometimes kind of a scary thing to step into that, because you have to have the faith and trust that I can't see it. I can't see the end of this. I don't quite understand why I'm feeling guided this way. I really want this job, but you're telling me I should get this one? This makes no sense. It doesn't make as much money. Or I feel like I'm supposed to sell my house. This doesn't make sense. I just bought it. Like, it could be any number of things. Or I should take this class. I don't even like knitting, but maybe it's that you're supposed to meet a person in that class who you're going to need for future endeavors. I don't know, but just trusting that if you are aligned with God's will, it is what you want, because you're essentially There's this, let me try to explain it this way. And I wrote a blog about this. I'll try to link it in the description. But there's a Buddhist belief system or mantra, I'm not sure what to call it, but it's kind of at the top of their teachings. And that is that desire is the root of all suffering. And it's something that took me a really long time to wrap my head around. I just couldn't understand it because, well, what about good desires? What about I want to have children? Or what about I have this desire to have more money so I can give more to charity, or I have the desire to go on a mission, or these good things. So what's wrong with righteous desires? Nothing inherently. However, if that righteous desire isn't in alignment with what our path really is supposed to be, what if we just go on a mission because everybody else is telling us we're supposed to? And what if we're not supposed to go? What if we're supposed to do this thing over here? And that might sound preposterous to people who are members of the church, like, oh, you're saying not to go on a mission? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to be going on a mission because God's telling you to, not because it's what you do next. And when we give up our desires and we have none, we can have that peace and joy in getting swallowed up in God's desires and following those desires. And by following God's desires, it's not our desires anymore. And so suddenly this path and our being and our existence can have peace where it didn't before. So the only way to rid our life of desire and suffering is to align with the light and do whatever it says to do. This is not an easy thing, but as you learn over time to trust it, you'll see just how you'll have all these archived memories of, oh yeah, it worked this time, that time, that time, and it'll become easier and easier to lean into those things, even if they don't initially make sense. So, as thoughts enter your mind, you have to be willing to let the ones go that are not serving you and only embrace the ones you want to keep. It's also important to stop identifying with the thoughts in your head. So when you have a thought and it's grotesque or mean or something that you're like, oh, I'm a horrible person. Like that's what I used to think. Now I think these thoughts, these are not me, and these are going to leave. I'm asking them to leave now. Again, these thoughts, not identifying with the thoughts, not my thoughts, these thoughts. From here on out, you are essentially at a buffet, and maybe some people are putting things on your plate as well that you can take off and throw in the trash. Or you can pick and choose what things you put on your plate. And some of us have piled our plates full of a symbolic poo, and we really do need to go throw that plate away and, or at the very least, clean the plate off, disinfect it, and go fill up with things that will actually nourish our soul, our spirit, our body, our mind, and our energy. Over time, you will use these techniques that I teach you in this program to build a new identity, one that will continually expand, one that is extremely open-minded. And I want you to go through this mental exercise with me. I want you to imagine that you are in a room and it's pretty much empty. In fact, you might ask yourself, is this room empty? Because sometimes you might have a lot of clutter in the room. And if you see a lot of clutter in the room, then you can later, after this podcast, go through and clean the room up. Bring a dump truck. Take all of the stuff in the room and put it onto this dump truck. Clean the room out. Sanitize it. You can clean the walls, the floors, the ceiling until it's clear. And when you can get to a space where you can see a clean, clear room with just you sitting in there, I want you to imagine one door that leads out of this room, and it's cracked open just a little bit, and you can see some of the light coming through. You feel comfortable in this room. It feels safe. It feels recognizable. You feel like nothing could really hurt you in this room. And yet something is beckoning you to go out that door. And when you're ready, I want you to walk to the door, and open it as much as you can. It might just be a few inches. You might feel brave enough to swing it open. But whatever you're able to do, and you might want to go through this exercise repeatedly until you can open the door fully and step out into the unknown. That you're walking out of this identity of yours, this comfortable space, where you're saying, well, I'm not comfortable. Well, most of us, when we are not changing, it's because we're used to what we have, and we're symbolically, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually staying put, because change scares us to some extent. I want you to open that door and walk out of the room and meet the light there, whether it's Jesus Christ or a light of some sort that you can follow, and follow it out of that room and see where it leads you. And I want you to exit that space, look behind you and say, I'm really grateful for you. I'm really grateful that I was able to feel safe there. It's time for me to move on now. New home, new space, decorate differently. So that is my recommendation for you this week, as well as this is another important thing that you're going to do. Whenever you look at yourself in the mirror in the morning, a lot of us will look at ourselves right there in the eye and then look down. From an energetic standpoint, you're literally unzipping yourself and making yourself vulnerable energetically. And what we want to do is zip up. So from now on, when you go into the bathroom or you see a mirror, you're going to look down, start at the bottom of the mirror, and then let your eyes follow your body up until you meet your eyes. And then you tell yourself, hi, I'm Jennifer. Nice to meet you. Because this might sound silly, but you are going to be reintroducing yourself to yourself every day, because you're going to be a new person every single day. You're growing into a new person. You're going to reintroduce yourself to this new version of you. You might also add something like, I love you, or that's a good face, good morning. Anything that makes you feel like, welcome day, welcome this new me. I'm doing this. Life is good. I'm grateful to be here. Incidentally, the physical body completely rebuilds itself. Every cell is replaced every 7 years. So you think of that physically, I think of that spiritually as well, that we can literally rebuild and become something new. There will be quite a few challenges, progressive extremism type offers in this program that will challenge you to change the way you eat, the way you treat your body, and so forth. And I want you to look at this long term. If you do these things that I challenge you to do, how is your body and your mind and your spirit and your soul going to be different 7 years from now? If you start now and you're rebuilding this body and everything else that goes with it, because we're all interconnected. We're connected to our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual body. It's all really one. How we treat our body affects our spirit. How we treat our spirit affects our body, and so forth. So you've got to think of this in terms of, I'm working towards a 1 month, a 3 month, a year, and a 7 to 10 year progress goal. You have to see that far in advance and keep going, because the you that you're going to create 7 to 10 years from now is going to be wildly different from the version you are now, believe it or not. I do want to end with a quote by C.S. Lewis, one of my favorite authors and persons in the entire planet, ever. He says, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. By the way, C.S. Lewis was atheist. He was a very different person than he became when he started writing his books. It's a really good biography to read, and there's actually a movie about him as well. So, highly recommend that. Thank you again for joining me here today. I'm your host, Jennifer Stirling-Campbell, and you're listening to the Overcome Depression podcast. If you are new to this podcast, please go watch all of the hashtag introduction videos first, and then consider downloading the Overcome Depression workbook. Links in the description. The content in this podcast is based on my own personal beliefs, is for informational purposes only, and is not intended to substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please refer to the full legal disclaimer in the description.